Good morning. It is great to see so many happy, smiling faces out there this morning. And you have a special treat with our opening. Sherry Phillips, who is one of your sisters in Christ, who is doing our leadership group and has corporate this year. And we are so blessed to have her. She has been a member of Community Bible Study for just a few years and has worshiped and has studied the Word and helped each of us along our path. So we welcome Sherry to tell us her story today.
Just a few years is actually 18. And this is the first time I've ever done an opening, so please bear with me. I'm a little bit nervous. Haven't y'all loved the study of Joshua? Am I talking into this just fine, or do I need to?
Not on.
Oops. Okay. That's fine. That's fine. If there's one thing I've learned about the study of Joshua, it's that God has a plan. He has a plan for the universe, and He has a plan for me and for you. Why is it then that we resist the God of the universe when it comes to our own lives? We think we know better, but that often leads to disaster, unfortunately. Although we haven't had much comic relief in Joshua, and I think you'll agree with that, another thing I've learned through studying the Bible is this: God has a sense of humor. I'm going to try to weave those two themes together this morning. And here's a disclaimer. I don't think you're going to need your Kleenex for my story. My husband Jim and I will celebrate our 50th anniversary on November the 6th. And in all those years, I can remember only one time when we didn't have pets in our lives. Most of them rescue animals. We had cats and dogs with very sensible names, like Ming, because he was a Pekingese, and Blackie, because she was a black cat, and Kelly, because she was calico, as you probably guessed, and Chester, among others. He limped up to our house one day, and so we named him Chester. He was a really sweet cat. In 2010, we lost Lexi, our beloved 14-year-old Siberian Husky, and our last old cat died, so the house was empty. However, by February 2011, we were back in business when we found a beautiful gray and white kitten one day in our very cold neighborhood. You remember the year that we had the really cold February, about 10 years ago? She needed a home. We named her Sadie, another sensible name, and gave her a lot of attention, much to the chagrin of our $2. I'm sure by now that you're wondering, where is this story going and what does it have to do with God's plan or sense of humor? So I promise to circle back in a minute. I just mentioned our 2 daughters. Their names are Allison and Leslie. They were born into this menagerie of indoor and outdoor animals and seemed to adjust to it very well. However, they didn't adjust to my plans for their lives at all. For example, they weren't perfect toddlers like you always think you're going to have, at least with the first one. Yes, I saw toddlers screaming on the floor of various establishments in town, but they were mine. Also, they weren't great students like I had planned, which hurt, especially since I was a teacher by profession. Yes, I got called to the office of Friendship High School one day to answer a question from the attendance clerk at Coronado High School. Did you just call to say that your daughter was ill and needed to go home? I thought the voice sounded very young. In addition, they tormented Jim and me during their teenage years, leaving us with bad parent questions, and I don't know if you've ever had any of those, and many sleepless nights. During those harrowing years, Jim probably spent more nights on the streets of Lubbock than our outdoor cats did. Worst of all, neither one of them has married, and thus no grandchildren. And I do enjoy seeing all of y'all's grandchildren's pictures, but you'll have to see pictures of my animals as well. My plans were wrecked in my eyes, but God. How many times in the Bible do we hear that phrase? But God. He had a plan. He gave us two sweet, beautiful daughters who love us very much and have given us joy through, guess what? Granddogs and grandcats. Of course, we'd always get to see them through visits to Denton and Austin or here in Lubbock when they came. But then they'd go back home like grandchildren do. Peace and quiet would come to our house again. Let's fast forward to 2018, the year everything changed, or at least the quiet, empty house changed. Our daughter, who lived in Denton, decided she needed to come home. She said to get her head on straight. And this was not in my plans, to have a child come home. But God, He said, she needs you. Have any of you ever thought or said, no kid of mine is coming home and living with us again? Well, I had, but God. Of course, when Allison moved home, she brought JJ, her neurotic tabby cat, with her. By the way, JJ is short for Jesse James, which is probably why she is neurotic. And when I say neurotic, I'm talking about shredding toilet paper, pulling all of the Kleenex out of the Kleenex box when she has the chance, and waiting until you get dressed, especially when you have on black pants, like I do today, and rubbing up against you as you're trying to get out the door. However, with JJ, the first started flying because Sadie, who was the princess, according to our daughters, because they were a little jealous of her, I think, she was not happy to share her kingdom with another cat. Then that summer, as we were spending more and more time out on our patio, a really cute black and white kitten decided to join us. So, of course, we took her in, and Allison named her Coco Chanel. I don't know what it is with the names that our girls give our cats. When Leslie came home from Austin to visit, she always brought her little white poodle mixed, named Merle Haggard, who loves to chase cats, so you can imagine how the cats reacted. So at that point, we had 3 cats and a grand dog, who thankfully did not live with us. We also had Frankie, and Frankie is a garage cat who stops by nearly every day to grab a bite to eat. And I got to name him, by the way, and I thought it was a pretty sensible name because we didn't know what he was. The only reason I think he is a boy is because we haven't had kittens in the garage like we have in past years when we've taken in various other cats. Okay, now let's talk about the most recent surprise. And this was on July 12th, which was my birthday. Leslie came home with Merle Haggard and another dog. She had a friend who wanted to get rid of his 2-year-old French bulldog named Martha, of all things, because that's where he got this dog. She figured if we met Martha, we would love her, and of course we did. But Martha needed to have a new name, so the girls chose, what else? Loretta Lynn. Well, that was a wild weekend. Even Merle Haggard and Loretta Lynn couldn't get along. Thankfully, Leslie and Merle Haggard went back to Austin on Monday, but Loretta Lynn stayed. When I tell people I live in a barn and feel like a zookeeper, they just laugh and think I'm being sarcastic. However, if you want to see what I'm really talking about, you can come by any morning for feeding time at the zoo. In conclusion, I think you can tell that God definitely has a sense of humor from the details of this story. But what about God's plan for me? It's comforting to know that if I trust in the Lord, He will make all my paths straight. Unfortunately, I know myself, and I will probably veer off the path from time to time. And on those days, I'll just have to be brave and courageous like Joshua. Thank y'all for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful time in your core groups.